This SoonerScoop.com video is streaming in crystal clear 4K resolution on YouTube thanks to Enjoy Vision in Oklahoma City. If you're ready to see the rest of the world just as clearly, get your fresh perspective at Enjoy Vision. Enjoy Vision. This is where Sooner Scoop LASIX.
When is the right time? When is the right time to pass the baton? When is the best time to make an announcement like this? Not sure it's ever perfect or predictable, but they always say you'll know. Well, I see a friend of mine here, multi-Emmy Award winner, producer for CBS, and it just made me think of a certain kind of moment. There's this iconic moment, if you've ever watched The Masters on CBS, where after the tournament is concluded, Jim Nantz, the previous Masters champion, the new Masters champion, goes to Butler Cabin. They have a few moments of conversation, and then just almost punctual, Jim Nantz turns to the chairman and says, "Mr. Chairman, it's that time." So now is that time. And I'm mixed emotions like you would expect, but I'm really excited about the future. So today it's more appropriate, like, Madam Chairman, Mr. President, it's that time.
That was the scene on Tuesday morning. Welcome back. Joe Castiglione talking about his good buddy Lance Barrow, who has been, I guess, responsible for the last 30 years or so before he retired for the Masters on CBS. Interesting press conference. We heard from Joe Castiglione today as he formally announced his retirement from the University of Oklahoma. Obviously, he will stay on for another year. We heard from University President Joe Harroz, as well as the Board of Regent Chairwoman Anita Holloway. George, welcome back to SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel here as we had an interesting morning over at the stadium. Obviously, something that, I think was not expected. By talking about yesterday's announcement or report. We did the show yesterday on Joe Castiglione and the announcement. Today we had the press conference with the Joes as well as Anita Holloway talking about kind of the future of everything that is to be for a new hire within the athletic department. Obviously the leader, the sitter head, the athletic director, but certainly a celebration and such for Joe Castiglione, who calls it a career with Oklahoma.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I know several media members were talking about, this kind of reminds them of when Bob Stoops retired in the summer of, what was that, 2017. And, I was there for that. It was actually one of the first things I ever covered as a student reporter. And this definitely felt different.
Yeah.
I think that the Bob Stoops retirement was definitely a pretty big shock for everyone. This didn't feel as much of a shock, maybe a surprise of when the news was dropped. But this is something that we've talked about for several years now. How much longer does Joe Castiglione want to do this? And, I think that he's going out, on his own terms, and that was an important thing for him, I think, but also just being 67 years old, the amount of change that's going on across college athletics that I know we talked about yesterday, but also inside the athletic department, the dynamic, the hierarchy, whatever you want to call it, it has changed at OU. And, we kind of got into that a little bit today with Joe Harroz and Joe C, but it is going to be fascinating, trying to replace somebody like Joe Castiglione, who had the success that he did, not only in major sports like football and men's basketball, but you think of all the success they had in other sports, the consistency, the stability that he had was just remarkable. And trying to find someone who fits that role is going to be very interesting to see how they navigate that.
Certainly, you could put out all the accolades, right? The 26 national titles, the 117 conference championships, certainly the leadership that Joe Castiglione brought over the last 27 years, going into 28 years now as the athletic director. He will stay on for a year. I think that we've covered that. I know that there was maybe a little bit of confusion out there on that, but we will talk about everything in this program today, just in terms of maybe what they're looking for in the next hire, what Joe Harroz has thought about his relationship with Joe Castiglione. Obviously, has been one that has been a long time coming. I know that it was 2 years that Joe Harroz had left the university in 2008 to 2010. Then he came back, and certainly since he's taken over as president. But certainly interesting. We will get to all of that, everything that was said. You could hear the entire press conference in full right here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. We uploaded just nearly about an hour and 25-minute press conference hearing from all the dignitaries talking about Joe Castiglione. Before we get to hearing from them, let us tell you about our good friends over at William & Lauren. As the official custom clothier of OU football, William & Lauren outfits your favorite OU players in custom suits that boost their confidence off the field to match their confidence on the field. Their perfectly tailored clothing ensures every Sooner stands out in comfort and style at prices that make luxury accessible. You can visit William & Lauren in Oklahoma City, or as Mr. Stoya did in Tulsa. That is Sam Stoya, not George. George went to the Oklahoma City one. Or online at williamandlauren.com. That is williamandlauren.com. Dress like a champion and make your style as legendary as Oklahoma football. George, the suit is custom made. You got it ready for Saturday for the big wedding day.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, and still fits me. Haven't put on any weight or anything like that. Got some really cool lining in there, and also Eddie, it's totally custom made. So they have the date July 12th, 2025 inside there. So, and it's a suit I'll probably wear the rest of my life. Having that nice of a black suit, but to have the wedding date on the inside pockets, it's pretty cool.
Well, that'll be dependent upon your workout regime.
Yes, correct. I need to stay in shape.
That's right. All right, let's get into it. Obviously, today was maybe more of a celebration, right, of what the last 27 years have meant, not just for Joe Castiglione, but the University of Oklahoma, just in terms of the loyalty and leadership that comes with being the athletic director at a place for nearly, I guess it would be almost 3 decades.
Yeah, and Joe Harroz said it. He said, it's damn hard to do what Joe Castiglione's done, which, he is the longest tenured athletic director in the country, which is pretty remarkable. And to have the success that he has, and also, stay at OU. I think that obviously he had a lot of opportunities to leave. Joe Harroz spoke to that. We never really hear about those, including 2 months ago. I mean, Joe Harroz kind of gave us that little nugget that a school called him 2 months ago about potentially taking their job. So I think it's pretty crazy to look back on the 28 years and all the success he had. And you talk to people outside of the OU program, and they tell you Joe C is the best in the business. So it was definitely, like you said, I think a lot of us media had questions about the future, and we'll get to those here in a second. But I think for Joe Harroz and Joe C and Anita Holloway, it was a celebration of the career he's had so far.
Here is University of Oklahoma President Joe Harroz talking about what George just said. School's been coming after Joe C here as of late.
And I can tell you how many options he has had to go to higher paydays. A lot of folks like to leak all the times they get a job offer. That isn't the case with Joe C. Blue chip program after blue chip program has come calling for Joe. And every time he's told them no, clearly and quietly. The last one I know about those was just 2 months ago, and I won't say the name of the program, but they came and said, there be no search. We'll just name you. The position is yours. And Joe, when I found out about it, I said, Joe, I understand they're coming at you. And Joe looked at me and said, well, this is home. I'm not going there.
He won't say it, but maybe we could speculate. Joe Castiglione did go to Maryland. Maryland was just looking for an athletic director in their opening. You never know. Maybe it was his alma mater that came a-calling.
Yeah, and there were several openings. Maryland, Michigan State, Georgia Tech, who just hired Ryan Alpert from Tennessee, who was a name that I had mentioned as a potential candidate for Oklahoma, who's done a really good job there in Knoxville.
Read the list of 10 names that you threw out there yesterday on the hot board that we released on SoonerScoop.com.
But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to think of, there's probably been a lot of schools called Joe Castiglione over the last 28 years, considering, the success he's had. And he even mentioned, at Missouri, I don't think he ever really wanted to leave Missouri. And it took, 3 different offers from Oklahoma until he finally said yes. So highly sought after, and one of those guys that, it wouldn't be a shock even as he enters retirement if he gets some phone calls.
We mentioned it on Monday on the program, just in terms of this is a athletic department for the better part of the last quarter century, really, that you looked at. You had David Bourne as the president, you had Bob Stoops as the head football coach, and you had Joe Castiglione as the athletic director. Kind of wild to think that you wake up in a world where, and it's going to be a year from now, but none of those three guys will be associated to a certain extent with the Oklahoma athletics program. Obviously, David Bourne has passed away. Bob Stoops now into a full retirement life, as well as Joe Castiglione on his way out here in a year.
Yeah, and we should mention Bob Stoops did talk to our own Kerry Murdoch and told Kerry he has no interest in the AD job, as much as I know people in the YouTube comments and on the message boards want Bob to be the next AD. But it's crazy. I mean, those are the three that you thought of when you thought of OU athletics and the success they had and the consistency, the stability. For all three of them now to be either gone or on their way out. In Joe C's case, it's interesting, and I think the future, they hope to build that same stability, whether it's with Brent Venables, obviously Joe Harroz, he's in his 6th year as the president, and whoever they hire as the next AD, it's pivotal that they kind of have that same stability moving forward.
It will be interesting as well when you're talking about having to replace the shoes of Joe Castiglione. You're looking at certain qualities, certain characteristics of somebody that will lead the athletic department. And Joe Harroz was asked of that. We'll get to that in a second. But it does seem like, certainly being a leader is that might be an obvious when you're talking about the next athletic director. But it will be interesting to see which way they go on this. And obviously, Randall Stevenson leading the charge. We will get to him in a second. But it's just kind of open right now. It seems like maybe they go outside of the box, right, and look for somebody that might not even be in athletics to be the next athletic director.
Yeah, it was our own Pete Nakos that put out the report this morning during the press conference saying that OU very well could make an outside the box hire. And that's what's very fascinating about this search. And you and I talked about it, and I kind of hinted at it, yesterday that, look, I think they'll look into guys like a Zach Selman that has the AD experience, obviously worked at Oklahoma for a long time. There's other ADs out there that I'm sure that they'll call and ask about. But don't be surprised if they are also, calling and asking about, different guys in the corporate world, in the professional sports world. Like, I think that Oklahoma is open to a lot of different candidates. And with the way that Joe C's handled this in terms of, stepping away, but also, being the AD for the next year, they have a lot of time to kind of figure out what direction they want to go.
Perhaps the job is at the bare minimum the same, right, of what it was when he took over in 1998. But you talk about the landscape as a whole in college athletics, it's different from what it was 3 years ago, let alone 1998.
Yeah, and that's what makes the job so I asked Joe C, like, how much has this job, changed just in the last couple of years? And I think it's been a lot. I mean, you look at NIL, revenue sharing, all of that. And did that play a factor into Joe C deciding to step away when he did? I don't know. I think yes, like partly, like there's just a lot more going on. And it also makes you wonder, does that change what the athletic director is moving forward and what they're looking for? It used to be you want an AD that has probably been an AD before, maybe at a smaller school or maybe at a different SEC school or something like that, somebody that has worked in college administration. I don't know if that's the case anymore. I wonder if Oklahoma treats this more like a business or a major corporation, a company, especially with a guy like Randall Stevenson, tasked with leading the search. It's going to be interesting to see what exactly they're looking for. And they didn't really give us a ton of, details. I think it's still important to have, like you said, a leader and somebody that can relate to a lot of different people. But it is going to be interesting to what kind of background and resume that they're looking for.
Here is Joe Harroz talking about qualities that they will be looking for in a new athletic director, as well as Joe Castiglione on any advice that he would give his successor.
We look at the attributes that we need for the next athletic director. It's someone that has both the vision, an understanding of the landscape, and the ability to act, to move. And the changes are going to continue to come. And so I think the most important attribute is someone that understands the changing landscape and has the ability to navigate it. I think that's the central attribute today, and one that we'll be looking at. We've already announced Randall Stevenson will be leading that search, and that's for a different day, but those are the attributes that we're looking for.
Lean into the future, and don't be afraid to be a change agent. And know what comes with that. It's not going to be always popular, and not everybody's going to understand the elements to it. But I will tell you, the ones that look at what the mission is and keep their eye looking forward, they're the ones that are going to win. And so however you want to define the skills of the next AD, you better be a leader that can lean in, accept, and effectuate change of the future. Because if it's not if the people in the business don't do the leading, then who is?
Joe Castiglione talking about some advice and maybe some characteristics that he would desire in a new athletic director. I think one of the things that your next line of thought goes to, okay, well, what's next for Oklahoma? The one thing that they do have working in their favor, as much as there's going to be an urgency by the Randall Stevenson as well as the committee that is looking for the next athletic director, they do have ample runway here with Joe Castiglione finishing out the academic calendar in 2026.
Yeah, there's no real rush to hire somebody right away because you do have Joe C in place. Now, I'm sure that they would like to go out and get somebody, before the end of the football season because let's be honest, you might have to make a major decision there in the football program. So I think that would probably be the goal, but you do have the opportunity for Oklahoma to go out and interview all the different type of candidates that you want to. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of different names that have been thrown out there in the college athletics, atmosphere, but there's a lot of people I think that we've never heard of, Eddie, that I'm sure Randall Stevenson wants to take a look at, because in this new college athletics world where players are getting paid and have to fundraise and all of that stuff, there's other people that I think could fit this role that maybe wouldn't have been considered before. So being able to have that time to, kind of go through all the different candidates, pick the brain of Josie, who will be on the committee, Joe Harroz will be on the committee, as well as whoever else is on there, I think is really important for Oklahoma and gives them more time to make sure they get this hire right.
Here is Joe Harroz talking about the timeline that Oklahoma will be looking at to fill the vacancy left by the retirement of Joe Castiglione.
True Joe Castiglione fashion, giving us this runway, and he's given us lots of runway. So it's going to allow us to go through a process that's not rushed, and one that is disciplined, and that takes into account the landscape that we're in. So I feel great about the timeline. We're not, sometimes in athletics, you have a week or two to do your hiring, whether it's a head coach or an AD, and we're just not in that position. And I've got, every confidence in Randall and the team around him. Again, it's a search committee. And Randall's expertise, as I said before, coupled with advice from Joe and others on that committee, and we'll be announcing that committee hopefully relatively soon, what that committee looks like. I think you'll see from the composition of it, once it's put together, that we've got a committee that can provide both insights into where the landscape is going, also an understanding of our history and tradition, and coupling those together to get the right person to be here. So it's going to take a little time, but I think we'll have that right team being led by Randall that moves forward.
Joe Harroz mentioned it there, talking about Randall Stevenson. He's going to be in charge of the search committee for Oklahoma's new athletic director, and it's interesting, to say the least. We talked about that a little bit on the program yesterday here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. You talk about timelines right now, and it seems like over the last 365 days, a lot has changed compared to maybe even the last 20 years of Oklahoma athletics. We talked about the kind of the pillars that were David Boren, Joe Castiglione, Bob Stoops. They're all gone. You look at the just a year ago yesterday, I believe it was, you mentioned that Oklahoma had named Curtis Lofton the general manager. That's obviously changed with Jim Nagy in the front office that he's brought in. It seems like there are a lot of moving parts right now in what is going to be a massive 2025 athletic calendar.
And Randall Stevenson is somebody that's had a major influence on all of this, Eddie. When you think about the hierarchy inside the athletic department, Randall has been a part of some major decisions. And for them to trust him with this decision, I think is totally, I keep using the word fascinating, but it's true. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think, they hired him December 3rd, and he's only been here for, what is that, 7 months. And now he's leading the charge in making arguably the most important hire at the university right now. And that's crazy to think about. And you think about his background, and that's where it gets really interesting. I mean, this is a guy that was the CEO of AT&T for 13 years. And yes, he has some background in sports. He was on the PGA Tour board, for I think 11 years, 2012 to 2023. And he's done some broadcasting rights and media deals like that. But this is a guy who he's a businessman at heart. And so that makes you wonder, where's he going to go with this? What does he envision for the future of OU athletics and that athletic department? What's the hierarchy? Who's making decisions? I mean, that's been something you and I have talked about since Jim Nagy was hired. Is Jim Nagy making coaching decisions? He's obviously, making, recruiting decisions and roster building and all of that. But, who does he report to? And then who does that person report to? Do they report to Randall Stevenson? What is the role of the athletic director? And I think it's all kind of being redefined, and you're seeing that structure change in the athletic department. Who has the power, right? That's what everybody wants to know. And I think right now, Randall Stevenson has a lot of power, and it's going to be very interesting to see, what direction does he go with this? And again, the fact that they are, and when I say they, President Joe Harroz as well as the Board of Regents are entrusting him with this type of decision. It's interesting.
It'll be interesting to see who serves on the committee.
Yep.
On the search committee. As Joe Harroz just said, I do think just based off of Randall Stevenson and the way that he exited the PGA Tour policy board, I wouldn't imagine that anybody from the Saudi Arabian PIF fund, the Public Investment Fund, will be on that. It might be good for NIL.
I was about to say, it'd be great. They could turn into Texas Tech. They'd have endless money.
I liked your idea of just hiring Cody Campbell. Just make him the athletic department. We will see. Joe Harroz, the University of Oklahoma president, did talk about Randall Stevenson on Tuesday morning, and here is that clip.
It gives me confidence. So Joe and I reached out and brought in Randall back in October because we recognized how much change there was. And we knew we needed somebody that loved the university, that had truly world-class talent at recognizing disruptive change and adapting to it. In his 13 years as CEO of AT&T, that's what he lived in, was disruptive change. He's been involved with the PGA of America. He's done massive media deals. He understands the media landscape. And so we brought him in to give us a hand. And I think you saw a product of that, of he and Joe working together with bringing in restructuring, putting in the GM operation, putting Jim Nagy in there, the talent he attracted, and that putting us in first, as I understand it, in the country position of a true pro GM front office. So what gives me confidence that he will do a great job leading this, because it's going to combine. We asked, it's not good form to have the successor pick, the predecessor pick the successor. Joe C. has agreed to be an advisor to the committee. The committee is going to be tight and really talented and good. And Randall's going to have not just his own background, but that of the committee, and Joe C. providing advice to help hopefully bring to bear that collection of talents to find the next Joe C.
That will be interesting in the coming days and weeks, right? Who's going to be on that committee alongside Randall Stevenson? You've already wrote today after the press conference. You can read it on SoonerScoop.com about kind of the hierarchy and where this is going to go in terms of, kind of this newfound world that Oklahoma's entering in, not just in college athletics, but just as a university and as a athletic program by itself, a standalone. It seems that things are changing for sure.
Yeah, and it opens up so many questions, Eddie. Like even the question of, we always talk about this is such a big football season, right? And winning is important for Brent Venables to keep his job. let's think about this. I mean, if they have a whole new athletic director in there, I mean, none of these people that are now in, positions of power, whether it's Jim Nagy, Randall Stevenson, whoever they hire as AD, none of them hired Brent Venables. And does that change what needs to happen this year for him to keep his job? Like, those are the type of questions that all of a sudden you're thinking about with this type of move and the timing of it coming from Joe C. I think it's all very interesting, and it almost makes you, do the Brian Windhorst of like, put your fingers up of like, what's going on in Norman, Oklahoma?
Ultimately, a lot of these questions are answered to a certain extent based off of what happens starting in August with the football program.
Exactly. And again, it's just, there's a lot of changes going on. And, for all the good that Joe C's done over the last, 28 years, and it's been a lot of great, a lot of success. I think the last couple years you've seen a shift, and especially because the football program hasn't performed up to expectations. And so Oklahoma is looking at, new ways of structuring things. And I think that's also not just because the football team hasn't had success, but just because of the ever evolving, landscape of this thing. And that's what I think Joe Harroz and even Joe C talked about is, whoever this is has to have a really strong mindset and perspective of what's about to come and understand that things can happen, things can change quickly.
A shift because of some shit, basically, is
Yes.
what it has been. When you're talking about Joe Castiglione, though, 67 years old, it certainly doesn't seem like, from what we've learned over the last 48 hours, as well as what they talked about today, that he has any true interest in just completely hanging it up. Obviously, 2 more years after he gets done at the end of the academic calendar in June of 2026, he would then move into a emeritus role within the university as something of an advisor, basically. I think is what it would boil down to. But the questions have always been out there, and it was something that Toby Rowland asked on Tuesday boarding. Would Joe Castiglione be interested in maybe serving as a college football commissioner? That's always been on the table, or something of that realm.
That's always been floated out there, right? Whenever it's come up of, what if college football separates from the NCAA or something like that, or even, something like a commissioner of the college football playoff committee. I think that's been brought up, and obviously he sat on the committee. Could he be the chair of something like that? He sat, I think he was the chair of the NCAA tournament years ago.
He was.
He was on that board as well.
St. Bonaventure never forgets about it.
They'll never forget for sure. But those type of roles, even NCAA commissioner, I know has been something that's brought up, or a conference commissioner, something like that. And you never say never. I do think though, and 67 is really not that old. Like, I think Joe could continue to do this for 10 more years and be good at it or be good at something else. But I do think there's a part of Joe that, look, he's given up a good amount of his life to doing this and working in college athletics, that I do think he will enjoy taking some time off. His 2 sons, obviously spending some time with them, as well as his wife Kristen, who I know wants him to stay busy, but I think also I'm sure wants to do some traveling and things like that. So I don't know. I don't expect him to do anything other than maybe he's a professor at Oklahoma. I could see that teaching a sports management class or something like that.
Should be interesting. Toby Rowland did ask Joe C. if he'd be interested in some of those other opportunities on Tuesday boarding.
Who knows what the future will bring? And I'm not leaving any little dangling thing so somebody could drive a wedge into that. I don't know what's going to come. I appreciate our chairman talking about being a servant leader. I've always wanted to be first and foremost a servant leader for the athletes and the coaches and the staff, this university at large. But the business itself has, offered me chances over the years to serve in leadership roles on various committees, and so I don't know what that will mean going forward. But I still have a high motor. I still have a lot of passion, and I still know why I made this decision. So whatever it is I do choose, it will be done in concert with what Miss Kristen thinks is best for our family, and she deserves the utmost respect for that part of the decision.
Got to get the I guess it would be the I'm trying to think, like the permission slip signed by the head of the household there. It does. And, I think in closing, we talk about everything that he's been able to accomplish over the last 27, 28 years going into this athletic season. There is a lot to still be done, right, in terms of the ushering in of Oklahoma into this new landscape of college football, as well as everything that's on the table for him now as athletic director over the next year in seeing out a bunch of stuff that they've started, whether it be the way that they handle NIL and or the way that Oklahoma is going to handle the revenue share.
Yeah, I think all of that. And even the projects, Eddie, think of all the things they still want to get done. The baseball project, which I know you've been reporting on for some time, the new entertainment district, which they're hoping, finally gets figured out here, very soon, and they can get, going on that. Women's gymnastics is in the middle of, renovations. They want to do the West Side Stadium project, and I think they're close to having the money for that as well. So he'll be helping out with a lot of that fundraising, as well as, like you said, making sure Oklahoma is in good shape for the long haul in terms of revenue sharing, NIL, making sure that's a fluid, process, and handing the keys off to whoever they end up hiring, and making sure that this thing is still a well-oiled machine. I think that's very important to Joe. I mean, he talks a lot about, leaving the place better than when you found it. Now, when he found Oklahoma and he came to Oklahoma, they were in a hole, right? I think they mentioned it today. They were in like an $18 million deficit, only had a $23 million budget. Now they're one of the only self-sustaining athletic departments in the country. Over $200 million in revenue and in budget. I think that he's definitely already done that, but I think that he knows there's still more work to do, as well as helping whoever that next person is.
Here in the short term, that probably doesn't help the Oklahoma football fan that just cares about winning football games on Saturdays during the fall. But certainly, it's been almost larger than life, if you will, to a certain extent, athletic program with the success that they've had, whether it be pick a sport, softball, obviously, football has had its fair share of good years under Bob Stoops over the last 20 years. It's been kind of the staple of how to run an athletic department. And as we said, there's plenty to still be done. Our own Kerry Murdoch asked Joe Castiglione about finishing out some of the things that he started here in Norman.
Well, that's what excites me. I mean, none of this is perfect. If you could put a structure out there, said, okay, that's what the new world is supposed to look like, we'd all be aggressively attacking the path toward it. The part of it is, the challenge of it, yes, but the excitement of trying to shape. And like you said, Kerry, the most important thing for me is to leave this program pointed upwards. And I truly believe going into this upcoming year, there are countless examples where you can point to where we're going to take big positive steps forward and leaning into, doing what's necessary to position Oklahoma for success. So I don't look at it like, I don't look at the issues or what we don't have. I'm more excited about focusing on the things we either have or need to have to be successful. And I want to work with the president and obviously when the new AD comes here to help transition the right way so we truly keep the momentum that's been started. And it's positive.
That was Joe Castiglione on Tuesday, and that's going to do it for today's program. It was interesting. I think that, this is a day that, as we said at the top, that a lot of us knew was going to come at some point. Right? Yep. He wasn't going to be the athletic director at Oklahoma for 40 years, but 27, 28 years is a hell of a run. And it's just kind of hard to believe that this day happened, as many of these other days have happened, just in terms of, you talked about it at the beginning with Bob Stoops making his retirement announcement. Although this one was a little bit different, it does kind of ring the same bell just in terms of it felt awkward at times.
Yeah. And I think that he'll be celebrated. I mean, it was interesting today that Joe Harroz kind of hinted that he might get a statue, which, man, OU loves them some statues.
They're keeping the bronze business in business. How about that?
Which would be, fascinating if that ended up happening. But I think now, Eddie, my shift in focus turns to what are they going to do? What is this going to look like? And, we said it earlier, but the football season this year, it could be I mean, it's monumental, and for a lot of reasons, people's jobs could be on the line, all of that. But I also think that this season could define the future of, OU athletics for a while. If either they have great success or they don't, and they have to, go in a different direction, and whoever the new AD is, what say they will have, Jim Nagy and his future at Oklahoma, and him making some big decisions. It's going to be a very interesting thing to watch over the next, 6 to 7 months.
And speaking about football, which is right around the corner, we'll be headed out to Atlanta next week at the beginning of the week for SEC Media Day. Big 12 Media Day already underway down in Frisco over the next couple of days. It was just announced that quarterback John Mateer, as well as Robert Spears-Jennings, and R. Mason Thomas will be the representative for Oklahoma in Atlanta next week.
Yeah, great group. I'm excited to get down there and obviously talk to John Mateer, but also I think of somebody like R. Mason, who I would assume is going to be on just about every single all SEC list before the season gets going. So it'll be fun to get down there and also talk to Brent, get his thoughts on the upcoming year and how summer's been going.
Maybe a couple updates on the wide receiver injury situation with Giovanni Gibson and Jaden Gibson, and certainly something that we've been talking about here over the last couple of weeks as things start to, I don't know, maybe it's the weather as it gets a little bit warmer outside. It does feel like you're starting to ramp into this idea that football is just around the corner.
It's crazy. I mean, it's also these media day weeks are always funny because you get some just insane comments out there, but like Brett Yarmark.
It's talking season.
Yeah, Brett Yarmark saying that they're the deepest conference in college football this year, the Big 12. It's one of those. It's that time of the year. It's let's get on the field and play it out.
Maybe we could send Brett Yormark to William and Lauren, get him a custom suit.
He does have some really nice suits.
He's a scumbag. All right, that's going to do it. For George Stoya, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We'll see you back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.